Hello, welcome to Bodhicaryavatara, chapter 7, verse 58. Sarvatah paribhutascha manastabdhas tapasvinaha tepi chen maninam madhye dinastu vada kidrishaha. I'll give it to you with the Sanskrit text. Sarvatah paribhutascha manastabdhas tapasvinaha tepi chen maninam madhye dinastu vada kidrishaha. Sarvata, on all sides, all round, in all, it can also mean in all respects. It's from sarva, a well-known word, sarva, meaning all or every. It can be used in singular and plural. All the Buddhas, sarve buddha, which in Pali, of course, is sabbe buddha. Now, with this suffix taha, taha, which in Pali we have to, sabbato, it would be in Pali, sarvata. It's an old Vedic suffix, and it's an alternative ablative, literally from all, from everything. Later on, it ceased to be used as an ablative suffix and took on more the meaning of an adverbializing suffix. In other words, you take a noun or an adjective, add on this suffix taha, and then you make an adverb out of it. For example, in the, I think it's the Anapanasati Sutta, the sutta on the mindfulness of breathing in and out. You say he perceives the body as body. This is kayang kayato samanupasati is kayataha in Sanskrit. So he sees the body kayataha simply as pure body, not my body, I hate this body, I like this body, but just as pure body, as that is body. He sees the earth as earth, prativim prativato, some prativita would be in Sanskrit. So here it's a different, slightly different form of adverb. It's still an adverbial form. He sees it an adverb in a sense of manner or place, from all. In other words, all round, on all sides, in all respects. So he is despised on all sides, meaning here, of course, by everyone. Paribhuta, despised. Bhu, to be. Paribhu, pari around, bhu, to be around or go around. So the original meaning was just, if I got a note on it here, yeah, to be round something or go round it, and then to surpass it, to excel it, is in positive meanings. But then it can have a pejorative meaning as to disregard, just ignore somebody, not take any notice of them, and then to despise or insult them. In other words, you're not giving your respectful attention to them. You're paribhavasi. You're just leaving them aside and insulting them effectively by not a direct insult, but just being disregarded, not contempt, but beneath contempt would gets the kind of tone of it, just totally ignored. So paribhu, and the past participle is paribhuta, just as past participle bhu, bhuta, paribhuta. So despised, or held in contempt on all sides. Manastabdhas tapasvina. Manastabdha. The root stub or stumb, it means it's from that same root sta, meaning to stand. So stambha would mean something, a stanchion, a support. The word stay is in the main stay, something that props or holds something up that keeps it standing. It's made of different roots. It's not star, it's a stumb. But it's very likely from that same origin, just as our word stay and mainstay is ultimately from the same root as that sta, to stand. So the past participle is stabdha, so supported, held up. Manastabda, pride supported, is supported by pride. In other words, the only thing you've got to support yourself is your own vanity. There's no reality. Everyone else despises you. You're a bit, as we saw before, hatotsava. Your sense of energy and enterprise is gone. You're what you've only all you've got to sustain yourself is your vanity, your pride. So that's why you're manastabda, pride supported. Tapasvinaha. Tapasvin, this is from our well-known word, tapas, meaning, normally means austerities, but from the root tap, meaning to burn, and then by extension to suffer pain, generally. Tap, specifically burn, by extension to be in pain, generally. So tapas means originally then burning, and then by extension, to suffer pain and discomfort. But normally, in a very positive sense, you're doing it voluntarily as part of your asceticism, as part of your spiritual path. But it can also have a kind of a negative connotation. You're in pain. You're miserable, bit worthless, miserable, downtrodden. It does have that meaning as well, and that's how it's used here. And the vin, sometimes instead of the ending in, you have a vin. Effectively the same meaning. The vin is much less common, but we have it in tapas vin, a person of tapas, can mean in the good sense or the bad sense. Here, miserable, mortified, and the plural, as we saw before, yogi, yogin, yoginaha, tapasvin, tapasvinaha, the consonantal declension. So they're miserable or they're paupers, downtrodden. This first line is clear enough. Despised, sarvatah paribhutascha, and despised on all sides. Manastabdha, propped up by vanity, meaning nothing but their vanity to prop them up. Tapasvina, miserable. Now, the exact meaning of this second line, I had some difficulty, and I do have a slight doubt still. I think I've got it. But I've noticed that different translators have done it slightly different ways, with an element of uncertainty in what it means, which is very unusual because Shantideva normally makes it very clear what he's getting at. When you read a verse of Shantideva, you know what he's on about, all right. He typically hits the bullseye. That's the point he's making. Here, my best shot at it, and I'm not alone in this, happily. If so, take the people described in line 1. Okay, now if even those people can rank as being among, I'll analyze the language in a moment. My suggested meaning is, even if people like that, like as described in the first line, are to be ranked or counted among those who have mana, some sense of pride, dinastu vadakidrisha, then how will it be for for dina? It means, you're really low down, defeated, afflicted. And here, the idea is here, you don't even have any vanity. You don't have any genuine pride. You don't even have any false pride. You're really afflicted and miserable and without pride. So people who can at least prop themselves up with pride, they're in a pretty bad way. they are still despised, miserable. But if you haven't even got that, if you're a real dina, kidrisha, literally of what kind, means how is it for them? So at least that means that the people with the vanity, at least have got their vanity to rely on. Those who haven't even got that, kidrisha, of what kind are they? Meaning how really miserable it must be for them. So let's unpick this. Chet, so I'm going to change this to chet here. Chet, as we know, means if, and it never occurs at the beginning of a word group or a sentence. You can have an if at the beginning of a word group or a sentence, but that is yedi. So yedi, if, can occur at the beginning of a sentence. The word chet has exactly the same meaning, if, but it's always an enclitic. It must always follow something else. So tepi chet. If we want to use the English order, it would be te api, sorry, chet apite, which would be an incorrect order in Sanskrit. And the chet by sandhi, a T followed by an M, it remains a dental, but it becomes the nasal dental, as it becomes chen maninam. And you'll often see that any word ending in a dental t followed by a m, it changes to a tepi chen maninam madhye. So, madhya, neuter noun here, madhyam, which is exactly the same meaning and the same origin, etymologically the same word as the word medium. Madhyam, medium, just means the middle, in the middle. You can make an adjective of it. In Sanskrit, madhyama, in Pali, majjhima, and majjhima nikaya, the middle length, majjhima, the middle length, nikaya, the middle length body of texts. So, maninam, this is the genitive plural of manin. And remember that in the consonantal declension, that is where the stem ends in a consonant, the genitive plural is not anam, just So of the yogis would be yoginam. Of the yogas, yoga, genitive plural, yoganam. But yoginam, just add the So, for example, the Blessed One, the stem Bhagavant, in Sanskrit, it is Bhagavan, and in Pali, Bhagava. In the genitive, it is Bhagavataha, Pali, Bhagavato. Instrumental, same in both Sanskrit and Pali, Bhagavata, just add the A for the instrumental in the consonantal stem. In Pali, we have the chant Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo. The Dhamma has been well proclaimed Bhagavata by the Blessed One. And if you want to put that in the genitive plural, it is Bhagavatam. Bhagavatam. This, by the way, in Pali, you can't have a long vowel followed by anuswara. So it has to be Bhagavatam. By the talking about anuswaras, sorry, I should have put this should be an anuswara there. I'll change that. Maninam madhye anuswara. There we are. It's correctly written in the Devanagari, the nam with the anuswara. But here, because it's followed by an M, it would be pronounced as an M. Maninam madhye, as if it were a double M. So te, they, in other words, the people described in the first line. Te pi, which is te api. Hang on, sorry, in the Santi Vigraha. te api becomes tepi with Sandhi, and that's how it's written in Devanagari. Tepi, even. So, and api, again, when it means even, it will be an enclitic. So, and you can hear we have two eclitics, te api chet, if even they. But we can't say chet api te in Sanskrit. It has to be the other way around. Te api chet, te api chet. So, if even they, madhye, are middle or are in the middle, stand among, that here are ranked among, are counted among the proud, people with pride, false though it be, even if people like that, even if people like that are among the proud, here has the meaning of are ranked among the proud, or can properly be considered to be among the proud. Dinastu vada. Vada is the imperative from vad, to speak, as in the vada. Theravada, for example, the speaking or the teaching of the Theras. And this is the imperative. Say, tell me, tell me. It's a rhetorical command. So if one person is in one situation, then say, so, like a rhetorical device. Just think about it, how awful it must be. Dinastu. As for the dina, the real downtrodden, the really abject, so the dina, let me put that with the visarga, take out the sandhi. So the dina would be on its own, but before a t, it becomes a s, so it's dinastu. Dinastu vada. As for the really abject, say, kidrisha, of what kind? It's just, again, another rhetorical of what kind as a way for saying, how must it be for them? What must their situation be? There's some kidrisha, again from the root drish, to see. We have another verbal noun, drisha, but I think I'm right in saying that it's only ever used in a compound, meaning like something. We most often find it with a pronoun prefix. So tadrisha, that like, meaning of that kind, which, by the way, by a phonetic quirk, you would have expected to see tadrisha, but it becomes tadrisha. And similarly, madrisha, with the combining form of aham, mat, madrisha, in Sanskrit becomes madrisha. And both of those follow that same rule in Pali, but with a phonetic mutation. It's simply tadisa and madisa. And madisa, as many of you will know in Pali, often the d often becomes a r, becomes marisa. But when it's used like that, it is, oh, you who are like me, marisa, like me. In other words, you don't know his name, but oh, friend, you who I accept as being my equal. Madisa, marisa, madrisha in Sanskrit. Now, tadrisa of that type, of that kind, let's make an interrogative. Of what type? You'd expect to see kaha, meaning who, or kim, what, but instead you get a slightly irregular mutation to ki. So kidrisha, of what type, looking like what? You say, of what type is he? Kidrishusti. But here, then, as I said, in a rhetorical question, compassionate or contempt, what kind of, oh goodness me, what kind of situation are you in? What kind of thing do you think you're doing? The rhetorical question to express shock or surprise. So tad becomes ta. Another very common word, we'll look at it while we're at it, is idrisha. Idam, this. So let's take this, just the stem of that id. You'd expect to see idrish, which actually cognate with the Latin word id, the ego and the id, just meaning that. Id, we write ie, it means id est, that is to say id est, same stem id in Sanskrit. But rather than saying idrisha, so we say tadrisha becomes tadrisha, madrisha becomes madrisha, similarly idrisha becomes idrisha, meaning this, of this type, like this. So I've referred you to verse 39, makes the feminine in E, by the way. So idrishi vipatti means this like such a misfortune such as this. So you'll see this, kidrisha, tadrisha, madrisha, idrisha. You'll see this. You'll see this very frequently in Sanskrit and Pali. Some of the drisha in Sanskrit, just disa in Pali. So I'll go through this once more. Read it through once more. Sarvata paribhutascha manastabdhas tapasvinah te pichen maninam madhye dinastu vada kidrishaha. And that concludes verse 58.